on-time start in spite of anticipated delay. So let's start with 7 Savas sayings. Mama, you're able to see it? You want to read it? Our Ashok is not there.
Yes.
Sure, go
7
ahead.
Savas sayings. Desire for nothing except desirelessness. Hope for nothing except to rise above all hopes. Want nothing and you will have everything. Seek not to possess anything but to surrender everything. Serve others with the understanding that in them you are serving me. Be resigned completely to my will, and my will be yours. Let nothing shake your faith in me, and all your bindings will be shaken off. Can you expand it a bit? Difficult. Real happiness lies in making others happy. The real desire is that of I can't see the full screen. Just wait. Okay, I have a copy. I will read from that. Real happiness lies in making others happy. The real desire is that which leads you to become perfect in order to make others perfect. The real aim is that which aims to make others become God by first attaining Godhood yourself. 4. Be angry with none but your weakness. Hate none but your lustful self. Be greedy to own more and more wealth of tolerance and justice. Let your temptation be to tempt me with your love in order to receive my grace. Wage war against your desires, and Godhood will be your victory. Love others as you would love yourself and all that is yours. Fortunate are they whose love is tested by misfortunes. Love demands that the lover sacrifice for the beloved. Real living is dying for God. Live less for yourselves and more for others. One must die to one's own self to be able to live in all other selves. One who dies for God lives forever. This period of Sahas is the period of my suffering and helplessness. My glorification will follow my humiliation. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai.
Thank you. I wonder which Sehvas this was, where this was given. Maybe we should add that here. Yeah. So hope everybody's doing well and practicing meditation. So let's go to the next chapter. Welcome, Jayanti. Jai Baba.
Yeah.
Okay. Your message. Yeah. So we finished the 6 parts of meditation. The 7th and 8th is what is pending right now. So any comments or discussions before we start on part 7? Anybody did meditation? Anybody meditated on the divine theme? 2 things that we were all trying to do. No mics getting unmuted. Okay.
I read
So likewise,
chapter again. Jai Baba, I read the chapter again, the last chapter that you read. And
6. Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of it was very interesting. Those two tables about the forms of specialized meditation on page 229 and 217. Um, so interestingly, um, what I derived from it is like a kind of a flowchart table where see what is said in both the tables. The first table talks about the general classification of the types of meditation. So the first number one, Roman numeral one, page number 217. If you look at it, uh,
Okay.
you are in the second one. So it
Yeah,
talks
I
about
got it. I'm getting that.
see, the interesting thing is the two forms of meditation we are talking about is one, he talks about the meditation by the regular, ordinary, worldly people working on their material life. Okay, where it's called the varied forms of meditation before a person becomes an aspirant. Now, again, you are what you're seeing out here is before you do anything in your material life. Suppose you want to be a doctor or engineer, you have to have right knowledge. Then that is what I call as the theoretical intellectual knowledge. And then that right knowledge has to be put into right action. So if you're taking the scientists working in physics, chemistry, biology, they go through their PhDs and then they've joined a lab and come out with vaccines and stuff like that. So that is what that particular table 217, the varied forms of meditation before a person becomes an aspirant, has to do with the material life, material knowledge, including all the scientists and so on and so forth. Then the number two, forms of meditation of the aspirant, sadhak, or the initiate. So you have 2A and 2B. Now, 2A, general meditation and the assimilation of divine truths, which is basically an assimilation of divine truths is what, and under that you have three categories: philosophical thinking, hearing discourses from the masters, and reading the written expositions of the masters. So number two and number three, number three is what we are doing: reading the written exposition of the masters. Hearing discourses from the masters is, reading, like for example, there are all these, these are, an example would be Nisargadatta Maharaj. He spoke only in Marathi, and all those things were recorded. So you can hear those recording in Marathi, and then they have been transcribed into English. And an American guy, has basically made fantastic recordings. And similarly, Godman, or his name is, this is also for what is his name? Punjaji, Papaji. Now that guy also, his recordings are available on the net. Both of them speak about Advaita Vedanta, which is about the formless self, the impersonal meditation which they focus on. And number one here, the philosophical thinking, what we did, like spiritual shopping, reading Ramana Maharishi, JK, and so on and so forth. So number 2A, general meditation and the assimilation of divine truths, is getting the right knowledge, or what I call as spiritual knowledge. So Roman numeral one for the material life is the material knowledge to join a particular profession, doctor, engineer, lawyer. You go through a formal study, getting degrees, and then you practice. You go for 8 years in college, and then 40 years you practice, which is the right action. But then the second Roman form is about the spiritual knowledge. So 2A deals with spiritual knowledge, general meditation, and the assimilation of divine truths, which has three categories. Then 2B, specialized meditation, which selects from definite items of experience, is putting the spiritual knowledge into spiritual action under three different categories, which is meditation concerned with the objects of experience, and which we know from the other table, it includes both forms of personal meditation and forms of impersonal meditation. There are 7 categories. So totally under specialized meditation, there are 12, which has been divided into 3. So you have objects of experience, subject of experience, and the mental operations. So all 3, there are about 12 parts to it, which is there in the other table. So what you are doing out here is you are doing different forms of meditation as you go higher and higher. And then lastly, the number 3 is the goal. So when you were reading the 7 Sahava sayings right now, the third one, which talks about, the aim and the goal, which is basically to become perfect or attain godhood, so that you can make others perfect or help others. So the interesting thing when you read that 7 Sahava sayings now is very clear that first we have to work on ourselves, reach the goal. And if you don't drop your body and you're still living in planet Earth, then your function becomes to help others who are on the path. So that is where the 3 types is given here. One is nirvana, which is the first stage of real fana, and then which we call as FAMN, fana, annihilation of the mind, manonash, or nirvana, where you only experience the divine absolute vacuum state, which is the Paratpar Parabrahma state, which we were unconscious of. That becomes conscious, becomes the conscious experience in the nirvana state throughout. Then people who are privileged, then go to the second stage of fana, real fana, which is Nirvikalpa Samadhi. This is where we call it as God realization, self realization, Satchitananda, infinite knowledge, infinite power, infinite bliss. Now, under this, we know that after 3 or 4 days, people can drop their body, but a few, that will be 56 God realized souls who will be in the category of Majzub, Paramahamsa, Jivan Mukta, and Sadguru. So the first 2, that is Majzub and Paramahamsa. Paramahamsa is called Majzub Salik or Salik Majzub, depending on whether God consciousness is dominant, which is called Majzub Salik, and Salik Majzub is creation consciousness. If it's dominant, it's called Salik Majzub. So Majzub and Salik, Majzub Salik, Salik Majzub experience Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Whereas the Jivan Mukta, which are 2 categories, we know Akmal and another one, and the Sadgurus experience Sahaja Samadhi, which is basically divinity in action. And so this table summarizes beautifully what are the stages that a human being goes through in those 84 lakh human cycles. So initially you're a caveman, then you become a farmer, then you become like, a king or emperor and so on. And then we have seen this whole evolution. And then you ask, who am I? And that is where now today, if you look at the 21st century, because we are so influenced by the West, everybody wants to be a Bezos or a, Musk or whatever. And then people like us hopefully have started looking at our spiritual belief systems. And now we have Baba in our, I call it, we don't have to win the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize we have won is Baba's grace. But now we have to work very hard on ourselves so that we can fulfill that third aspect of the 7 Sahava sayings. The aim of God, the aim of a spiritual aspirant is to become God realized so that you can help others to become perfect. Jai Baba.
Yeah. So did I hear you say you actually made a hierarchical chart? Because that really makes sense, because the 2 tables are actually nested. The second table is nested into 2, and so it's actually a huge tree of meditation types. So 29.
Yes, correct. You are right. The table 229, 2B is basically an expansion of the first table,
Third
specialized 2B.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah. So actually, they should remove the word ABC from the
Yes, also.
use a different. So I think we can change that. We can put, maybe it should be like small ABC or even some other form. Even 1, 2, 3 will do. I think
1, 2, 3 is
100
better. 1, 2, 3 is better.
2B1, 2B2, and 2B3. You can say the
Yeah.
specialized meditation is Roman numeral 2 and B, capital B. So each one of the 3 different types of specialized meditation. But again, under you have like 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 12 forms of personal meditation, impersonal meditation. So probably we'll have to, instead of using.
I hope we are not confusing the rest. Without visualization, it's tough to imagine what we're saying. But basically, it's level 1, level 2, level 3, and this is level 3 broken up further. So
exactly.
this section is level 4 of the tree. So anyway, it's just academic, right? Let's go on back to FAMN.
So Karthik, can you put some comments there in the table? Because I think this is very important to understand it correctly. So, I mean, like.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, we can discuss it. But comments as in?
Like you were putting the numbers there, right? Instead of 1, 2, 3.
No, actually, let me actually, from the time we did the first table, I wanted to do it. So if you go to PowerPoint, you have hierarchical trees, right? So I'll probably create a hierarchical tree like that, and then have it spread out left to right. Then it'll be clear, and then I'll put it up on Trello.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
So what basically is happening is you're starting from the base and then having a series of specific classifications, and each classification has sub classifications. And what you see here, right? So if you take this is a leaf node. Watching mental operations is the 4th leaf node in that tree. So I mean, so you'll see that when I visualize it. I hope I finish it sometime today and put it up.
Thank you.
So so then the table is not so complex, right? That they have tried to do it without visualization, and that's the problem. Okay, anything to be discussed from all the Telegram back and forth? There's quite a bit of discussion that is going on, which is all good. Rajesh, Kama, Ravi, Mama, everybody was busy. So it's good to see.
No, I think the way the Kama explained that 13.4 billion years, yeah, that's what I also think. My personal.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Form to form. I mean, formless to form, and then the objective is to go back to formless, right?
It will happen. We're all in circles, actually.
Yeah. No, but then also, I think the greatest role of this avatar has been to give it as the scientific mind can take it, and that answers all the doubts, right? And fills all the, connects all the dots.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah. I had Mama say something, but he was on mute. Anyway, maybe it's not important.
No, Jay Baba, to add to what Karthik just said, which is what you said about the current avatar, making it scientific, in fact, proves the fact that not only laws of matter are scientific, but equally, or even before laws of matter were formally, put together, the laws of spirit is also very scientific. There is a scientific process, and it's been going on for 5,000 to 10,000 years ago, if you look at our Upanishads and so on. And the beauty is, Baba has made it easy for all of us that today you don't need to be born in a particular kind of, the 4 classes like, the Brahmin, Kshatriya, merchant, and so on, everybody has a smartphone and everybody has the capability to assimilate this knowledge, which is what we are doing, the general form of meditation, reading, listening. And I can tell you my own experiences that a lot of the insights I have got is basically not by discussing with other Baba people, but able to just connect directly with the reading and contemplating on it. And Baba helps you, to actually clear all your doubts. And this is the beauty, that you don't have to depend on anybody. The book, the discourses God speaks, if you put your heart and soul into it, you can actually crack it, kind of thing. And then, of course, you have to execute in your practical day-to-day life. That is the biggest challenge. Hey, Baba.
On another note, I think we understand the futility and limitation of science when you do the DAG's journey correctly, right? Like I said it, probably contextually, science is where Baba starts from. But I think it also, at the end of the journey, you realize how lost science is in a way, right? So anyway, that's something to reflect upon.
I mean, the way the Baba has put up all these books is like wonderful. I mean, no match.
No match. How can it be having a match?
I
There's
mean,
excellence and then there's perfection. So what do you do? At the human realm, there can only be excellence.
Jay Baba, one personal experience is when I started reading Baba in New York from the New York Public Library in 97, 98. The internet had just taken off, and I had this kind of fantasy, vision. I would say, oh, I wish all these books that I see in the library could be on the net, which can be accessed, because then you don't have to carry on any of the books, And lo and behold, like we have seen now, like everything is online. It's so amazing, That is the beauty, that I tell people that for me, why the avataric age is on, or why I feel the avatar has come and gone, is because of the last 200 years. In my presentation, I talk about the 150 years of industrial revolution, 1800 to 1950. The 1950, the Turing machine, as we know, started the whole computer revolution 1950 to 1995. And I remember when Netscape went public, many people who are post internet don't know about Netscape, which was the original browser for the public. And then, of course, Microsoft copied it and so on and so forth. So 1995, that I call as the information economy, 45 years. And the knowledge economy, 95 to 2015, in 20 years, we went from regular phones. Remember, we were walking around with digital cameras and separate stuff. And today we have everything on a smartphone. And today we talk about disruptive technologies every 5 to 7 years, which is IR 4.0. So from 150 years to 45 years to 20 years to 7 years, I said, there has to be a divine force that made it happen, So for me, it's a clear proof of the avataric significance of the avatar's presence, Jai Baba.
Yeah, absolutely. You've talked about this in the past. Yeah. So let's get started. I think let's start with part 7, which is it starts with Nirvikalpa Samadhi. My screen is shared. Yes. Nirvikalpa Samadhi is unique. The different forms of meditation practiced before consciously entering the spiritual path, as well as the different forms of general and special meditation adopted after becoming an aspirant, are preparatory to the attainment of the Nirvikalpa state, the I am God state. Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or divinity in expression, is the experience of the Nirvikalpa state in which the aspirant becomes permanently established after realizing the ultimate goal of life. The Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha, or the God realized being, is continuous with all the prior forms of meditation, and through the grace of a perfect master, it can be the culmination of them. However, it is unique and of an entirely different dimension. Pre-spiritual meditation of the worldly. The spontaneity of Nirvikalpa Samadhi must be carefully distinguished from the pseudo sense of spontaneity present in the usual meditations of the worldly person who has not yet entered the path. The mind of the worldly individual is engrossed in sense objects, and he experiences no feeling of effort in meditating on these objects. His mind dwells upon them because of its natural interest in them and not because of any deliberate effort on his part. The sense of effort does not arise from allowing the mind to dwell upon these diverse worldly objects, but from trying to dissuade it from them. So, the pre-spiritual forms of meditation seem to have some similarity with the culminating Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha in having a sense of spontaneity. But this resemblance between the initial phase of meditation and its final phase is only superficial, since Nirvikalpa Samadhi and pre-spiritual meditations are divided from each other by vital differences of great spiritual importance. Illusory spontaneity of pre-spiritual meditation. The sense of spontaneity experienced in pre-spiritual meditations concerned with worldly objects and pursuits is due to the interests created by the sanskaras. Pre-spiritual meditations are the working out of the momentum of accumulated sanskaras of the past, and they are not only far from being the expression of true freedom, but are actually symptoms of spiritual bondage. At the pre-spiritual level, man is engulfed in unrelieved ignorance concerning the goal of infinite freedom. Though he is far from being happy and contented, he identifies so deeply with sanskaric interests that he experiences gratification in their furtherance. But the pleasure of his pursuits is conditional and transitory, and the spontaneity he experiences in them is illusory because throughout all his pursuits, his mind is working under limitations. True freedom and spontaneity exist only in Nirvikalpa. The mind is capable of genuine freedom and spontaneity of action only when it is completely free from sanskaric ties and interests, and this is possible only when the mind is merged in the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha. It is therefore important to note that though there may seem to be a superficial resemblance between the Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha and the pre-spiritual meditations of the worldly, this resemblance really hides the important difference between illusory spontaneity and true spontaneity, bondage and freedom, fleeting pleasure and abiding happiness. In the pre-spiritual meditations, the movement of the mind is under unconscious compulsion. And in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, mental activity is released under conscious and unfettered initiative. Meditation is a part of aspirant's struggle towards emancipation.
Can you explain the last sentence, please?
I'll read it again first. In the pre-spiritual meditations, the movement of the mind is under unconscious compulsion, and in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, mental activity is released under conscious and unfettered initiative. I think the reference is to the fact that in the pre-spiritual experiences, the mind is still finite and not free of sanskaric ties. Whereas in the latter, in the Nirvikalpa Samadhi state, it is the true experience of the infinite. That's just my understanding. Anybody else?
This is quite profound. I am not getting it so very clearly. So the first part is supposed to be totally unconscious, whereas the second is real active way of doing things so that you get the release. So how do we understand this? I'm unable to make it. Anyone else?
Jai Baba, the way I interpret it is that the first line in the paragraph says the mind is capable of genuine freedom and spontaneity of action only when it is completely free from sanskaric ties and interests. And this is possible when the mind is merged in the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha. So this is very clearly about the final state, the aim and goal of an aspirant, that if they become self-realized, they do have a mind, but it is what you call in God speaks parlance, that universal mind. Okay, that is why it says it will be of genuine freedom and spontaneity. When we talk about freedom, it is about material freedom and spiritual freedom. Spiritual freedom is technically about freedom from sanskaras. Material freedom is about freedom from having to do a 9 to 5 job, the rat race, the Maslow's hierarchy. So it is therefore important to note that though there may seem to be superficial resemblance between Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha and the pre-spiritual meditations of the worldly. So the pre-spiritual meditations of the worldly is equivalent to what we talked about, the material life of ordinary people, which is basically includes the scientists, who don't believe in God and they only are engrossed in the gross world, the gross sphere of existence. If I don't have proof and so on. So the skeptics who don't believe in avatars and gurus and stuff like that. And these people are not doing a bad job, they are good people. They are just stuck in their own world. And for them, that is meditation, that is because meditation is in everything, whether you are brushing your teeth, whether you are doing, whatever in material life also is a form of meditation if you're doing with concentration and doing a good job. So that is what is called the pre-spiritual meditations of the worldly. So this resemblance really hides the important difference between illusory spontaneity and true spontaneity. So illusory spontaneity can be about people who are so focused on the material life and, thinking this is it. There's nothing more to it. I'm doing a great job, And true spontaneity, I think, relates to the God realized people, who have gone through the spiritual involution. Then it talks about the bondage at freedom. Bondage is again the spiritual and material bondage. So most people are stuck in the material bondage, have to feed, the roti, kapda, makan, food, shelter, clothing, and so on, the kids, the college education, blah, blah, blah. On one side, you have Baba, the spiritual pull is there. On the other side is the material life. No, man, I can't leave now. I don't have enough money and so on. And then, so bondage, that is the sanskaric bondage, both from the material side and the spiritual side. And then bondage and freedom. So naturally, when we talk about self-realization or nirvana, it is complete freedom, from both material and spiritual things. Fleeting pleasure and abiding happiness. Of course, this is the Vipassana theory, that all the pleasures of the material world are impermanent. You're walking, you want to have a cycle. From cycle, you go to scooter, to car, to Maruti, to a Rolls Royce, and you go to space like the RBC, the Bezos and Branson and Musk, you can be in that category, which is a fleeting pleasure. And abiding happiness, this is the real goal, because the self, the soul, the super consciousness, after going through the whole 7 planes of involution, is abiding happiness, which we call, I think it is basically Satchitananda, So in the pre-spiritual meditations, the movement of the mind is under unconscious compulsion. Because I think it says the mind is under unconscious compulsion is because the mind is not yet ready for spiritual journey. It's still stuck in the material world. So that is why it is called the pre-spiritual meditations, which implies the material life. And in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, mental activity is released under conscious and unfettered initiative, because one is there is no mind in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, no Prarabdha Sanskaras. You are working with Yoga Sanskaras. So there is only what Baba calls it as conscious, unconscious inaction, conscious inaction, even though there is a lot of activity going on. So I think this is about the phases we go through. The end result, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, where you have complete spontaneity, true spontaneity under conscious and unfettered initiative, because there's nothing to do once you have realized. And then the beginning of a typical human being in this typical material life is the pre-spiritual meditations. I have to get a good education, get a good job, and kind of get all the good things of life. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, thank you so much. Thank you, Mamaji.
Okay. So then I'll continue.
I think I would just want to add one point here, that while we are moving in this journey, this Maya keeps pulling us back, right? It keeps telling us that this material is more important. Material gives you more happiness. But then ultimately, when you go through the journey, you feel that yes, spiritual happiness is more soothing than the material happiness. It keeps pulling you actually. I mean, that you want car, you want this, you want that, but ultimately you get a feeling that yes, this is better.
Yes, that is
I think
the
it is basically because every human being psychologically wants a sense of achievement, and material life gives us the sense of achievement and boosts the ego instantly, whereas the spiritual one takes a long time. Seeing is believing, and the material life is like helping the egoistic mind to see then and there and feel happy about the achievements.
Yeah, it's true. So this Maya keeps pulling you actually.
To add to what Jayanti just said, which is basically the mind ego, which needs to be sustained. And the ego is basically because of sanskaras. Sanskaras is basically because of our action of thoughts, words, and deeds in our daily life, good or bad. And that action is influenced by the existent sanskaras. So if the sanskaras are dominant, naturally Maya will play a big role. And also, unless you go through the opposites of duality, unless you experience both pleasure and pain in the material life, that is why one should not, I'm talking about my own experience, that I decided to indulge rather than control myself and stop myself. If I want to experience something, my mind keeps saying, hey, you got to do it 1, 2, 3, 4 times. I decided to surrender and do it. But in the back of my mind, I said to myself that based on what I have understood from the spiritual literature, this is temporary. And I tell Baba, hey, you know what? I'm going to leave it to you. Like the provisional working ego is where here you can use very diligently. If you're consciously able to accept your weaknesses and maybe indulge in those weaknesses for the time being, knowing that it is temporary, then you know what happens? Maya's hold starts to decrease. See, it's a very dangerous situation. I'm not encouraging anybody to do this, but each one of us have to figure out a way, because the fact that we have reached so far, because most of the time we didn't have the right knowledge, to be very frank with you. We were bombarded with all kinds of spiritual nonsense without any proper guidance. But now we have this knowledge. The only challenge is being able to put it into action all the time. So Maya's role is that, and you don't have to blame yourself. I tell myself I've got lust, greed, and anger because of my animal evolution, which is very much there, and that is what we are working on. And Baba clearly said that Maya is the creator of illusion, is the principle of ignorance. So that is why intense effort and infinite patience, and that is why I think he has given 84 lakh lives to work on it. I think, on a humorous note. Jai Baba.
Yeah, exactly.
Note, Rama, actually, if you are indulging in, at some point, you wouldn't go back to that. And that is what Rajneesh did, or I'm not prescribing here, Rajneesh, or even Swami Ramas did. When you have some kind of a lust or some kind of an affinity towards certain activities or certain products, just go for it, and after some time you yourself will feel no, not to indulge in it, and you leave it and you will never go back to it.
Right.
Yes.
So what I
So,
understand,
yeah.
I'm sorry, can I speak? Is it okay?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So what I understand very simply is that the pre-spiritual meditation is just about meditating on the material world or Maya, and the personal and impersonal meditations which we are doing in our spiritual path is where we are able to control this very Maya, and it culminates in the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Am I right
I
in my
think so.
understanding?
Could you repeat that, please?
Repeat it.
So I said the pre-spiritual meditation is where you're meditating unconsciously on the Maya or the material world. And as you enter into the spiritual path and you go through the both personal forms and the impersonal forms of meditation, you slowly get control over this Maya, and ultimately this culminates in the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. That is the
Yes.
path and the route.
Yes. Well said. Yes. Yes.
Thank
Only
you.
thing is, in the background, you are aware that you are not going to get caught in Maya.
Yeah,
You
that's
have
what
that. Yes.
slowly we evolve, right?
Yeah.
As we start these kind of meditations.
I just wanted to add
Oh, Ashok has come.
in the process of evolution, we think of it as a seesaw. At one side is abiding happiness, other side is fleeting pleasure. So, as a seesaw, if you reduce your fleeting pleasure, you're moving towards abiding happiness. It means you're moving upwards. That could be one simple way of putting it.
Thank you.
Yes. So what karma has gone through or partly advocates to others is that indulge than repress with awareness.
Yeah. Keep always in the back of the mind that Baba is there, and then our goal is to move ahead.
So take permission of Baba, meaning I'm not saying you have to take permission in that sense. You just use that provisional working ego concept. And as Doc Mama correctly said, with full awareness, you communicate that subliminally to Baba and say, you know what, in the end, I'm leaving it to you to help me dissolve this particular samskara of weakness that I'm indulging in. And as Jayanti also rightly said, it will automatically happen. It has happened to me, I mean, I won't get into the details of it, especially when I was a student, I indulged in, those, like they say in US, narcotics, kind of thing. And I went through a self-destructive approach. It was very, very tough time for me, because I didn't have any of these concepts, and at that age, unless you are very disciplined, I could see some of my fellow students who were able to see life is like a cordon. People who don't do anything and study, people who don't do anything and don't study, and people who indulge in narcotics and study and do very well, and people like me who like indulged in that and did not do great, somehow, whatever. But I can look back and I can tell you, I was really, and I worked on it, and I, again, thanks to Baba, slowly it dissolves. You don't know when it happens. That is the beauty of the whole thing. If you keep reinforcing yourself and putting that message to the universe, and to your guide, the universe makes it happen. The only thing you have to do is, like as Baba says, intense effort and infinite patience. That is the name of the game. Jai Baba.
Yeah,
I give
Jai
just
Baba.
example
I
to
think
get related. This is about Shankaracharya from Kanchi Shankaracharya Mutt, the first one among the three who's no more there, who lived about 100 plus years. So he lived a very, very pious life, and one day he liked one of the green sabji which was served to him, and he asked for more and he had it, and this because he liked and he commented. The second day also the cook served the same thing, and he still liked it, and he said it was made very well. Continuously 3 days he was served, and he asked for same, and then the third day also it was served. Third day it apparently stuck to him, saying that his interest towards food, or his interest towards one of the senses, is high. And then the fourth day he fasted, thinking that his mind is deviating. So this is one of the example that he himself personally said, that when you are, for him it is it is a bhakti yoga. So but the message is basically, if you are conscious about what you are doing, even if you are indulging into it, there is some point where you will feel whether it is a right indulging or not, and you will stop it. That's the message that he passed.
Yeah, but ma'am, my understanding is the way we are talking that but it is not for everyone. This very, very selected people will have that kind of understanding that, okay, I am doing it because of my sanskaras with a provisional working ego and other things. And this approach could be taken as a pretext to indulge in things. Because Baba has also said that the life of abstinence is better than the life of indulgence. And when we get into act that ties our hands, so you cannot open off your own, actually, then you need a master's grace to relieve you from there. So, okay, I accept that what is Kamaji and you also said, but it is not for everyone, actually. This may be very, very selected people may have that kind of understanding and development of consciousness that they can really get into that kind of mode, that they do things to dissipate their sanskaras and to experience things and then get over them of their own. Jai Baba.
I agree.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Just what I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah, go ahead, Jayanti.
Sorry, this
It's
is just what I am thinking. Spiritual
Yeah.
path is not for everybody. You would have traveled some time in that journey, and you would have crossed certain stages also. And in the initial stages of the spiritual path, that's why satsang or the team or whatever, the collaborative approach is prescribed, because we are there together to correct till you reach some other stage. And once we reach that stage of like whatever Shankaracharya was saying, that where our mind, our voice of soul, the first one is awareness. The voice of soul is guiding us. And if we come to that stage, then there is a guidance from the superconscious or from the supreme power, whatever way we want to call it. Till that time, I think um, we need some kind of a handholding or a collaboration or a satsang or whatever way we want to call it.
Jai
Yeah,
Baba.
so
I
I
think
think when
what
we
Sanjay,
go ahead,
sorry,
Kama.
I think I completely agree to 100% what Sanjay ji said. What he said is exactly correct. That better not to do and control and try to, you have to definitely, you you need the help of the guru, definitely, and it's better not to do it. That is, I would definitely agree what he says. He's correct. Jai Baba, thanks.
Yeah, so I think we discussed this even in the provisional working ego discussion, Sanjay ji, and I think it's a fine line. It's a personal line that we have to make a choice on. But the temptation of using the provisional working ego, or the fact that this indulgence technique will is not for everybody, and making that determination if you are eligible for it is not in your hands, simply because that you do not have a glimpse and control on the samsaric makeup that you are subject to, right? So this again goes to the point I keep making. We dearly miss the direct contact of a perfect master or avatar, but then this is how close we can get, I guess. So we'll live with that. So in that, I totally agree with what Kama said. As per the discourses and as per what Baba said, it's better to, not be in abstinence than in indulgence in anything in life, right? There is value in all the, in the good stuff. Okay, so let me continue reading. Unless there's any comments or reactions, Rajesh.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Yeah, very beautifully explained by everyone, actually. Thank you so much.
Yes, indeed. The different forms, I'm continuing from the last para in 241. The subtitle is Meditation, a part of aspirant's struggle towards emancipation. The different forms of meditation that characterize the life of the spiritual aspirant stand midway between the pre-spiritual meditations of the worldly individual and the final Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha. They also constitute the link between them. When a person's primary acquiescence in sanskaric interests is profoundly disturbed by setback, defeat, and suffering, or is shaken by a spark of spiritual understanding, he becomes conscious of his bondage and the falseness of his perceptions. All the different forms of meditation that are then resorted to by the aspirant arise as parts of his struggle toward emancipation from the bondage of the deceptive desires of the world. The forms of meditation that are spiritually important begin when the person has become an aspirant or sadhak. Meditation involves effort. The meditation of the aspirant in all its forms is deliberate in the sense that it is experienced as counteracting instinctive or other tendencies inherent in the mind. The aspirant adopts different forms of meditation as means to an end. That is because he looks upon them as avenues to the truth. They are not working out of some given impulse, but are parts of an intelligent and deliberate effort. Although these forms of meditation may be deliberate to start with, the mind gradually becomes habituated to them. The mind is also interested in the various aspects of truth which the different forms of meditation try to seize upon, and this increases spontaneity. In none of the meditations of a sadhak are the elements of spontaneity more pronounced than in those forms of personal meditation that give scope for and require the expression of love. But utter spontaneity and true freedom remain unattained until the goal of meditation is achieved. Till then, there is usually a mixture of a sense of deliberateness and a sense of spontaneity. The reaching out towards spiritual freedom is accompanied throughout by a sense of effort, which persists in some degree until all obstacles of false perceptions are overcome. Though effort may vary in its intensity, it never disappears entirely until it is swallowed up in the tranquility of final attainment. Progression towards Nirvikalpa. In Nirvikalpa Samadhi, there is no effort because there are no obstacles to overcome or objectives to achieve. there is the infinite spontaneity of unfettered freedom and the unbroken peace and bliss of truth realization. Progression toward the Nirvikalpa state consists in a transition from a state of unquestioned acquiescence in the momentum of sanskaras to a state of desperate struggle with sanskaric limitations, and finally to a state of complete freedom when consciousness is no longer determined by the deposits of the past but is active in the undimmed perception of the eternal truth. Please feel free to stop me if you need to discuss anything. Individual mind annihilated in Nirvikalpa. The Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha is different from the meditation of the aspirant, not only with respect to freedom and spontaneity of consciousness, but also with respect to many other important points. All the different forms of meditation that the aspirant might be engaged in, directly or indirectly, aim at securing a complete merging of the mind in the infinite truth. However, they only partially succeed in this merging and fall short of the annihilation of the individual mind. They represent varying degrees of approximation to the spiritual goal, but not its realization. On the other hand, in the Nirvikalpa state, there is realization of the spiritual goal, since the limited mind is completely annihilated and has arrived at a total merging in the infinite truth. Temporary exaltation. The aspirant's meditation in its higher flights often brings a sense of expansion and freedom, as well as the joy and illumination of the higher planes. But none of these are abiding, because in most cases, when the aspirant comes down from his exalted state of meditation, he's again what he was, namely an ordinary person who is bound in the unyielding shackles of sanskaric limitations.
Karthik, I have a question.
Sure.
So, like we have these various stages of meditation, pre-spiritual and then spiritual, and we also have various planes. So when they talk about as well as the joy and illumination of higher planes, does this refer to the planes of involution or just the planes of meditation? If you want, you can read that first line, please.
Sure. The aspirant's meditation in its higher flights often brings a sense of expansion and freedom, as well as the joy and illumination of the higher planes. I would imagine it is the planes, the 7 planes, not linked to meditation's planes.
Yes, Karthik is correct, because I think we are mixing two different things. It's just that, when you are meditating in the right way, when we are talking about the 12 different forms of specialized meditation, whether through objects of experience or through subject of experience or through mental operations, one is the personal form of God, the other one is the impersonal form of God. So, of course, depending on how intense and deep the meditation is, you can be in one of the planes. You can either be a must or you can be a kind of a salik, because actually real fana, sorry, I would call it fana and baka. Real fana, real baka happens in the 7th plane. But all of us actually go through fana baka experience even during our phenomenal world of existence of a different degree. And also the fana and baka is as infinite as the number of people. It's the experiences, the God experience and also the experience of creation. And so the meditation is basically to show us, later on, I think, you'll be reading where it says, we read about the different forms of meditation that characterize the life of the spiritual aspirant, stand midway between the pre-spiritual meditations of the worldly individual and the final Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Suddha. They also constitute the link between them. So, of course, when you do these meditations properly with the guidance of a perfect master, one could experience these different planes, and so I think that's what it means, that one could gain those experiences of different planes. But as Baba said, don't even look for it, because it is part of the real illusion. Every experience that you go through the planes from 1 to 6 is categorized as real illusion, and experience that we go through our material life, or what we call as reincarnation phase, that is called false illusion. So false illusion plus real illusion is equal to 0. But even if one gets those experiences, based on what Baba has said, we should not get attached to them, nor look forward to them or anticipate them. We should just discard them as part of the experience, like a stepping stone. Jai Baba.
Thank you. So we'll move on. We'll see the story of a yogi. The incompleteness of the different samadhis of the aspirant may be illustrated by the story of a yogi from Gwalior, India, who was very greedy. Through yoga, he had mastered the art of going into samadhi. One day, he sat opposite the palace of the Raja, and before going into samadhi, thought, I must have 1,000 rupees from the Raja. Then he went into samadhi and remained in that state for 7 full days. During this period, he took no food or drink, but only sat in one place, completely absorbed in trance meditation. People took him to be a saint, and when the Raja came to know about him, he also went to have his darshan. The Raja went near the yogi and happened to touch him on his back. The light touch was sufficient to bring him down from his samadhi, and as soon as he woke up from his trance meditation, he asked the Raja for 1,000 rupees. So the moral or the impact of that is for us to understand. Analysis of trance meditation. Just as a prisoner who looks out of the window of his prison and gazes at the vast expanse of the sky may get lost in the vision of unlimited space, the aspirant who enters into trance meditation may temporarily forget all his limitations while immersed in its light and bliss. But though the prisoner may have forgotten the prison, he has not escaped from it. In the same way, the aspirant who is absorbed in trance meditation has lost sight of the chains that bind him to the world of illusion, but he has not really broken through them. Just as the prisoner again becomes conscious of his bondage as soon as he gazes at his immediate surroundings, the aspirant becomes conscious of all his failings as soon as he regains normal consciousness. The ascending forms of trance meditation may bring the aspirant increasing occult powers, but not that unending state of knowledge and bliss that is continuously accessible in Nirvikalpa Samadhi to the Siddha, who has attained final emancipation by breaking through the chains of Maya. Nirvikalpa Samadhi, self-sustained. Another important difference is that in trance meditation, the aspirant is usually sustained by some object capable of exercising irresistible attraction. The lights, colors, smells, and sounds of the subtle sphere play a part in alluring the mind from the worldly things it may have been attached to. Thus, trance meditation is not self-sustained, but is dependent upon the object to which the mind directs itself. The Nirvikalpa Samadhi of the Siddha is self-sustained and is in no way dependent upon any object of the mind. Trance meditation is more like the stupor of intoxicating drugs. The intoxication lasts only as long as the effect of the drug lasts. So the trance continues to exist as long as the mind is under the sway of the object it is sustained by. Nirvikalpa, which is free from the domination of the object, is a state of full wakefulness in which there is no ebb and flow, waxing or waning, but only the steadiness of true perception. Those in Sahaja Samadhi as objects of meditation. The different forms of general and specialized meditation resorted to by the aspirant are useful and valuable within their own limits. They must not be regarded as having the same value for all or as being equally necessary to all. They are among the ways that lead the aspirant toward his divine destination. For the few who are in an advanced spiritual state, most of the ordinary forms of meditation are unnecessary. For those who are in direct contact with a perfect master or the avatar, many of the special forms of meditation are often unnecessary. It is enough for them to be under the guidance of the master and to love him. And those rare beings who have attained self-realization and have become perfect masters themselves are always in the state of Sahaja Samadhi or divinity in action. They not only do not need any forms of meditation, but they themselves become objects of meditation for the aspirants, for they are then able to give their best help to those who meditate upon them. So that is Nirvikalpa and then Sahaja Samadhi. Okay. Any questions? Kama, you want to summarize the chapter on Nirvikalpa Samadhi?
This process of meditation by an aspirant is sort of going forth and coming back, going forth and coming back into spiritual domain and then back to the material. So in this process, his life in the material world should change repeatedly as he gains better spiritual understanding. Otherwise, it is just another exercise. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, I think my question is also similar because we are talking about these forms of meditation culminating in Nirvikalpa Samadhi for us who live in the world, in the material world, not for sadhaks who have given up the material world and gone into the hills or mountains and stuff like that. So, how do you correlate the two? So you're still maybe earning your daily bread, doing whatever you are doing. At the same time, you are progressing spiritually to that level. So how does it all work? Any?
Yeah, Baba, I think that's a very good question. If I rephrase the question,
Please
that you are talking. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I said please do. I'm not very articulate. You're able to understand my questions very well. Thank you so much.
Again, Baba's grace. See, because I've attended so many presentations in my, work when I used to live abroad, that one thing I noticed, when you have to reply to somebody's query, it is always good to repeat that question, meaning from the person who is going to answer, because a lot of people are not able to hear what the question was asked, and also they wouldn't be able to understand. So it's always good to, this is something I learned, like what I call as the MBA program of life. And so I it's also good because if I don't articulate the question, you will say no, that's not what I mean, so it's always helpful, both ways.
Correct.
So I think what your question is that most of us, of course, we are in the Maslow's hierarchy, the basic rat race of life, taking care of the material life. Okay. And on the other side, we have spiritual life. Now, the question here is, are they two different entities or are they just two sides of the same coin? So I would call it the two sides of the same coin. And the way I define it is that how to lead a material life, spiritually speaking, in a spiritual sense. what does that mean? When we're talking about spirituality, Baba has given some very interesting, messages on spirituality. All those things that we have read in the messages, the 7 awakenings, what we read today, the 7 Sahwas sayings, is a form of spirituality. Spirituality is about our day-to-day relationships with animate and inanimate objects, both extrinsically and intrinsically. So we don't have to worry about the 8 hours of our sleep state, because that is effortless. If you are a person that does well in their waking life, you're going to get good sleep. No anxiety, none of those, no insomnia and stuff like that. So technically what we are trying to do is, in the 16 hours of our waking state in our daily life, I look at it from a very macro approach. If you live till 84, divided it by number 7, you get 12 years. And each of these 12 years stages, childhood, teenager, and so on, we have different duties and responsibilities. And we know, consciously or unconsciously, these are the things that I need to indulge, in my material life, because the consciousness is residing in this material body. The material body is impermanent. Consciousness wants to become super consciousness. Why it is not super consciousness? Because it is mixed with sanskaras. So we are trying to dissolve sanskaras. It has nothing to do with love. Love is like a medium, just like oxygen is required for your material body to sustain, whether you are sleeping or whether you're awake. Similarly, for my understanding, love is the medium through which you execute your task with total concentration and meditation and do a great job. Like the book, The Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It's about quality. It's a beautiful book that one should read. So here what we are doing is, now we have not been told, we are like, depending on whether you're born in the Baba family who have got the Baba literature right and you got a template, fantastic. But most of us, I'm a first 0 generation Baba lover, so I had to go through my trial and error. And what we are doing out here is that, based on your question, all these things that they have, that the forms of meditation, the 12 forms of specialized meditation. And I think in this reading, it was clearly said that one second. It clearly said that the different forms of general and specialized meditation resorted to by the aspirant are useful and valuable within their own limits. They must not be regarded as having the same value for all or as being equally necessary to all. They are among the ways that lead the aspirant toward his divine destination. And I think, in another chapter, you will come across the fact that Baba says that, in each life, reincarnation and karma probably, that we are working on different sanskaras, and in each lifetime, you might be using different forms of meditation. So coming back to the question of being a homemaker or a householder, none of the saints have said that. In fact, they encourage you to be a householder and a homemaker, because that is where all the challenges are. Because if you're going to sit in the hill in a cave, it ain't going to work, because you have to execute what you have mentally or intellectually understood spiritually. That has to be put into action. And the real action of thoughts, words, and deeds happen in the real stage of life. Let's say, for example, if Prime Minister Modi had Meher Baba as his guide, just like all of us, I mean, he would have I think our country would be running better, whatever that is. But I'm just giving you an example that I think King Janaka is a perfect example of somebody who was a Sadguru and was also a great king, and the king has a lot of responsibility. So if you can interpolate or extrapolate that, I think a typical householder, once you have the spiritual knowledge, I think that is the crux of this question. Once you have spiritual knowledge like what we have, then it's a matter of execution. So there is no duality between your daily life, what I call as the material life, because within that material life, which I call as an extrinsic or external form of doing action of thoughts, words, and deeds, there's an intrinsic aspect where are we doing it with love? Are we following the messages of Baba when we are relating to people and inanimate objects in our daily existence, and that is what we call as self-awareness and abiding in the self. And self is Baba. Baba is the embodied form of God, is the personal form of God, whereas the impersonal form of God is our own self, oils, our innermost loving self. Because who came first? The formless, infinite consciousness. Then it went through 84 lakhs and became all the Sadgurus and the perfect masters. So I think that there is no need to feel that spirituality is separate. Yes, I think in a country like India, to be spiritual and not be 100% uncorrupt is difficult. So thanks to Baba, even now I say, like, better to go abroad, work, make your moolah, and come back to India and chill. Because in India, if you have to deal with the daily business of life, if you're an IAS officer, if you're a corporate guy, I know all my friends in businesses, they have to bribe and do all kinds of nonsense. And if you're spiritually out there, how do you deal with it? That gets very dicey, So, Jai Baba, I hope I answered the question.
Yes, very interesting, and thank you so much.
So just to summarize this chapter,
Sure.
sorry, Karthik. I think that for me, this chapter is a summary of all the 6 parts that we read. Okay. Here he is showing the essence of basically what is general meditation, or what he call as pre-spiritual meditation of a worldly individual who's dealing with the material life, who doesn't know anything about spirituality. And then after going through material life, he is made as, you have become Rajat Gupta, and then, now you're thinking about your spiritual side, and then you have Baba, and you're now having to start working on your self-actualization process. So that is where the general meditation comes, where we know there are these 3 different aspects: listening, hearing the discourses, philosophical thinking, and contemplating on all those. And then the specialized meditation, which is more about the action aspect. So we have 12 forms of meditation, and depending on each individual's unique sanskaras, you can intuitively figure out what works for you, and leave it to Baba, because he will intuitively tell you, okay, this meditation technique is working for you or not, So it's a form of intuition, Of course, if you have Baba in your presence, you just have to listen to him. If you have a Sadguru, physical Sadguru with you, you just follow him. You don't have to read anything. You just follow him. But we are not in that category. We only have Baba and the books and these formulas out there. And he is definitely guiding everybody. And then when you go through these different forms of meditation, as Ashok said, are we have to go through all these different, what we call as sound, smell, sight, the subtle sound, subtle smells, and subtle seeing, all those things. Do we need to indulge in that? No need, just go veiled, and then hopefully, then Baba's grace, you win the lottery, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. First is Nirvana, and then Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And maybe if you're, Baba says that all souls are predestined right from the beginning of the Big Bang, what they are going to become, So we don't even have a hold on it. And hopefully, Doc Mama will become a Sadguru, and I would be very happy, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Yeah, I think the message that I read last Sunday, that you don't get to know that you're growing actually. As I mean, the body is going to grow, but on a day-to-day basis, you hardly realize that you are actually growing. So that's what I think in the spiritual sense also. Yeah. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. So
I think
things
much
like
more in
Nirvikalpa.
the spiritual sense. Yeah, go ahead, Soma.
Yeah.
So things like this Nirvikalpa Samadhi and all, I think it's a state of mind you're continuously in 24 hours as you execute your various duties in your various stations of life. Is that how I conclude it? It's not something you are making an effort to, by sitting for 2 hours and meditating on whatever aspect. You come to a stage where you're all the time, maybe taking Baba's name or in that state of mind and keeping it in mind while executing the various duties of life according to what you have learned. Is that a kind of state you are in?
Yes, that's a good way of pointing out that I personally believe that all of us, first thing for me is all human beings are God realized, but not experiencing it, because we do experience, that kind of meditation where the observer observed and the observation become one. When you are watching a movie, when you're watching a good ball game, basketball, football, baseball, or whatever, when you are probably traveling and just observing, you become one with it. For me, the example, as I've said earlier, is when I was trekking in the Himalayas, I could see the whole divine theme playing there, Now, so you're right. We all experience fana, the musty state and the suluk state, and these are temporary. So that gives us that encouragement and continue. Of course, the desire is there. Can I get this consistently 24/7, especially in the waking state? So that is part of the sadhana. And I think that is why Baba talks about manonash. See, people talk about loving Baba, but I want to ask them, hey, what do you mean loving Baba? For me, loving Baba is about, are you able to follow those messages and execute them on a daily basis? That is why Baba has given in the prior chapter about you can keep a diary about the thoughts that are going on in your mind, spiritually speaking, and then later you can contemplate on it. And then the third stage, he said that cutting, of distraction and concentration. 5 minutes you focus with open eyes on the form of Baba, and 5 minutes you have to close your eyes and focus on the infinity, the formless, the seven realities, existence, infinity, and so on and so forth. And because we can't control the mind, it's to make the mind still is something in this, you can't explain it, because as I said earlier, that the mind becomes still by itself in your in that kind of observer state, without your own knowing. So yes, we do experience that in different forms. Of course, that Nirvikalpa Samadhi state and Nirvana state, seventh plane state, unless we reach there, we can't describe it. And number two, Baba has also said the prarabdha, the state one, the Paratpar Parabrahma state, even the Sadgurus and the avatars will not be able to describe. They can only describe the state two, Paramatma state and the substates, So I think that the fact of the matter that we are human beings, we are defined as being, but we are human becomings, that is becoming in our material life, that's fair enough. But to become God realized itself is an oxymoron, because we are already there, except that, if I have karuna, I have to get rid of it. So the karuna in our life is our sanskaras, gross sanskaras, subtle sanskaras, mental sanskaras, which equate to our limited mind ego, the false ego self. So as long as we are aware of that, the false ego every time, and I'll give you an example, the movie screen, the white movie screen with the movie. So when you are watching, when you come to a movie theater to watch a movie, you're seeing the white screen and people are coming in, so you're seeing the white screen, great. Then the movie starts and then the movie ends. So depending on the movie, whether it is a thriller or a comedy or romance or whatever, the audience will take that emotion with them. Okay. So what is the analogy out here? Number one, whether there is an earthquake, flood, fire on the movie, the white screen doesn't get affected. Number one. Number two is the white screen doesn't need the movie, but the movie needs the white screen to be projected on. Now, this analogy is from Ramana Maharshi, And it's beautiful. If you look at the white screen as the realized self, the divine ego, and the movie as the false I self, which is constantly changing, and it's an imagination. The movie is just an imagination of, you take some actors, put a role, and you take it so serious. There is of course a difference between documentaries and movie making. So this, what I am trying to do is basically I'm saying that if you are watching a movie, and when you are watching the movie, constantly every second you are aware of the fact that this movie, behind the movie is the white screen, and we can take that analogy to our daily life and say that every time I'm doing something, that is just my ego, I have to do this, but behind that is the self. You can call it the provisional working ego, or as in my wish, as Baba said, if you're happy, Baba wants you to be happy. If you suffer, Baba wants you to suffer. So the self is only observing, and it's the same thing that's happening to all of us. And the message from Baba is basically that we have to focus on that self, which is the same in all of us, which is that the seven realities. The first one, existence, and second one is about love. So I think that is the journey we are all going through. Is what I've read before is, when you are really deeply sincere about being guided by a guru, then God sends a guru in a human form. And what the guru does is he takes you to your own self. He guides you to your own self. He doesn't make you dependent on him and doing all this Kriya Yoga and blah, blah, blah. That is the real essence of a real guru. So in a way, I think that this whole journey, and one word that I wanted to bring out here is, when Karthik was reading in page 243, is the word, the aspirant's meditation. It's 243, second paragraph, as temporary exaltation. That is a subtitle. It says the aspirant's meditation in its higher flights often brings a sense of expansion as freedom, as well as joy and elimination of the higher planes. But none of these are abiding, because in most cases, when the aspirant comes down from his exalted state of meditation, he is again what he was, an ordinary person who's bound in the unyielding shackles of sanskaric limitations. This challenge is there for people between the first and the sixth plane, So we don't have to worry that, I'm not in the planes, because even the guy in the sixth plane is in the same, except his sanskaras are mental, and he has only one duality, which is he sees God everywhere and he thinks he's separate from God, right? But the beauty is the self is always there. So if you listen to Nisargadatta Maharaj and Ramana Maharshi, I think you will get much more insights about this realized self, And so what I'm trying to say is, but none of these are abiding. So abidance in the self is the real goal. Self-realization, I think we have now, because we have this knowledge by reading the spiritual knowledge. But actually the practical aspect is, can we be in self-abidance? Self can be Baba, Baba abidance all the time, which is why he keeps saying, try to remember me all the time. I used to wonder, what the hell is that? What does he mean by saying? Because Baba is personification of what a human being should be, is perfection personified. But Baba is also formless. So the self is the formless aspect of God, and Baba is the personal form of God. That's it. Whatever suits you, which is personal meditation, you focus on Baba. And if you feel like, parallelly, you can switch between Baba and the self, the self-abidance. Jai Baba.
I was surprised you didn't
Baba.
start with abide. So when I heard the question, I was good. I mean, I am intrigued by the word you introduced in the last 2 weeks. Okay, I've been thinking about abide all the time. So I was surprised you didn't start with that word. But yeah, I'm glad it ended there. Right. So it's a very powerful word, abiding. Right, abiding in Baba, abiding in. So like, to answer Soma's question, it's only abiding, right? So that's what I was thinking.
Self-realization
Anyway,
is self-abidance. That's it. If you can work on this and contemplate on it, I think it will be a very interesting exercise.
You told me, and I've been doing it. So anyway, I think what's provocative, of course, is the fact that we are already self-realized. That we'll debate. But academically, I think that we'll debate. We'll not buy that right now. We are almost out of time.
You can buy one aspect.
We can always put self-realized ABC, and we are in the path of A.
Yeah, or we can put self-realized in brackets. Remember the old wedding invitations? When you're not finished the final exam, you have it in brackets, right?
Yeah,
So we'll put it in brackets.
No, you can put it this way. We are realized that we are the self, but we have to self-realize.
Yeah, correct. Correct.
I
We
think
are
what
boosting our
Jayanti said.
ego by all these ways.
Yes, I
Jayanti,
think what
then
Jayanti
Kama.
said was, what Jayanti said was fantastic. Well, ABC, jumping between those three, in our waking state. Sometimes we are reading, contemplating, or sometimes we are in the pre-spiritual meditation, being, in the material life. And sometimes when you are in being, you're not even conscious of it sometimes. So I really feel that all of us and every human being goes through these kind of experiences of Fana and Baka of different kinds. Okay, Baba.
So let's pray to abide in those moments. And till then, use the technique Baba has given us, which is remember him all the time, right? So, yeah, if there are no more questions, we can wrap up. Just a remind. Oh, by the way, any news on the new video? What parts? Not yet, no? I'm yet to see the bookstore video. The bookstore video you shared yesterday. But no news on the new one, right?
No news till now.
No.
Yeah. So I think they spend a lot of time processing it, which I don't do. I just upload as it is, right? So maybe they switch angles, edit stuff, and so on and so forth. That takes a lot of time. Even what I do takes away 20-30 minutes because it processes online, and then I update all the meta tags and upload it and confirm, share, update Trello. But then, yeah, I'm sure if they're doing a professional edit of the video, it takes a while. But I think they are way behind because the last video was recorded, he said, on 9th of July.
Yeah.
I mean, 9th of June.
Ah.
Yeah. So,
No,
anyway.
I think they should say if they want to have a clear exercise, at least 3 or 4 days time
Before,
if they
yes.
give
Yes.
for those who want to see or repeatedly see that and try to formulate some questions and then get some clarity later. So they put it up on Saturday night or Sunday morning, and then Sunday evening we are supposed to have an interaction. That is, I don't think it's a nice way of doing it. At least 3 days.
I agree.
Wednesday would be better.
No, I agree, but I think there is a merit to the format in the sense that it gives time for reflection. Whereas what we do is more here and now, right? Where we are reading and then immediately trying to discuss, and then we are already in the next chapter the next time. I like the fact that you're isolating the two pieces. One is somebody talking or reading, and then you have a deep discussion on it. But I think obviously there are reasons why we are doing what we're doing. We'll leave it to Baba, and I'm sure we are having fun as it is already. So we'll continue to do what we're doing. I like the format, but I agree with you. Maybe some more time to catch up with the video with our busy material lives would be useful.
Yes.
Karthik, that could be a type of meditation. First read, then introspect, and then discuss.
Yes, absolutely. So that's it from my side.
I think Karthik, our format for a smaller group like ours is much better actually. I think what he must be doing is, if you start questions, then you will lose what we were actually originally be talking, So for us, I think this is the best suited small group.
And I think the
Baba.
other advantage is we know everybody knows everybody, and then
Yeah,
that's
and then
that's what is the difference.
and we are on the subject at that point of time, so it's best
True,
to discuss right then and there actually. So I
True.
like this format rather. Yeah, Jai Baba.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we'll stick to what we're doing. All right. So on that note, let's wrap up. Let's see you all tomorrow. And if there's nothing else, I'll wrap up. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai.
Jai Baba.
Jai Meher Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba everyone.
Jai Baba.
Meher Baba.
Jai Baba.